The wind howls across an endless sheet of white. Ice stretches toward every horizon, its surface glittering under weak sunlight. The temperature hovers at 40 degrees below zero, cold enough to freeze exposed skin within minutes. This isn't some distant planet. This is Earth, your Earth. Only it's Earth as it existed 700,000 years ago, during what scientists call the Middle-Pleistocene period, a time when much of our planet lay beneath massive ice sheets. Imagine standing at the edge of a glacier that stretches beyond the limits of your vision. The air so crystalline and pure that distant mountains appear deceptively close. The only sounds, wind, ice, and perhaps the distant crack of a glacier carving. This was the world our ancestors faced, a world that would shape not just their bodies, but their minds, a world that would determine whether humanity as we know it would exist at all. For nearly 80% of human evolutionary history, our ancestors lived in the shadow of the ice, moving, adapting, surviving through climatic shifts so extreme they would reshape continents. The ice ages weren't just periods of cold, they were existential trials. Yet we rarely contemplate this frozen crucible that forged us. We seldom consider how close our lineage came to extinction, or how the rhythmic pulse of glaciation and warming sculpted our very nature as a species. Tonight, we journey back to a pivotal moment in Earth's history, a time when multiple human species walked the planet simultaneously, when our direct ancestors were still evolving the traits we now consider fundamentally human. The Middle Pleistocene, stretching roughly from 781,000 to 126,000 years ago, represents one of the most formative periods in human evolution. It witnessed dramatic climate oscillations, the spread of primitive fire use, and the first halting steps toward symbolic thought. What was it like to be human during this age of ice? How did our ancestors survive conditions that would kill a modern human in hours? And what traces of this frozen crucible remain embedded in our genes, our behaviors, even our dreams? These aren't merely academic questions, they strike at the heart of who we are. For in understanding our species' response to past climate extremes, we gain insight into our present and glimpses of our possible futures. Recent archaeological discoveries have upended our understanding of this period. Ancient DNA extracted from permafrost and cave sediments has revealed genetic secrets locked away for hundreds of thousands of years. New dating techniques have rewritten timelines once thought settled. The story that emerges challenges everything we thought we knew about early humans. It reveals a complex drama of adaptation, migration, interbreeding, and innovation, playing out against the backdrop of a planet in flux. Now tonight's journey begins not with certainty, but with mystery. How did a relatively hairless, physically unimposing primate not only survive the Ice Age, but emerge from it as the planet's dominant species? The answer involves an evolutionary puzzle we're still piecing together. Consider this paradox. Modern humans thrive in virtually every environment on Earth, from rainforests to deserts to Arctic tundra. Yet we require more technology than any other species simply to survive. Without our tools and knowledge, we are remarkably vulnerable. So how did our ancestors, with far more primitive technology, survive conditions that would kill us? The traditional explanation, that we simply outsmarted the elements, doesn't fully account for our success. Something deeper was at work. As the hours unfold, we'll examine provocative evidence suggesting the Ice Ages didn't just test our ancestors, they fundamentally transformed them, creating selective pressures that favored certain cognitive abilities, social structures, and physical adaptations. Some researchers now believe the Ice Ages accelerated human evolution, that the extreme conditions created evolutionary bottlenecks, drastically reducing population sizes, leading to rapid genetic changes that might have taken millions of years under more stable conditions. Others point to evidence that climate instability itself, the rapid oscillation between glacial and interglacial periods, selected for behavioral flexibility and innovation, making humans uniquely adaptable among primates. Throughout tonight's exploration, we'll weigh competing theories against archaeological evidence. We'll examine fossil records, genetic studies, geological data, and anthropological insights, all in pursuit of understanding how ice shaped humanity. By journey's end, you'll see your own existence in a new light, as the product of an evolutionary gauntlet so challenging that countless species before us failed to navigate it, a testament to both fragility and resilience. So settle in as we travel back 700,000 years to a world both alien and intimately connected to our own, a world of ice, fire, and the dawn of human consciousness. Chapter 2: Children of the Frost. The human body tells a story of tropical origins. Our relatively hairless skin, efficient sweating mechanism, and heat-adapted proportions all point to evolution in warm climates. Yet somehow, we conquered the coldest environments on Earth. This fundamental contradiction, tropical bodies surviving glacial conditions, represents one of evolution's most remarkable achievements, and it hints at something profound about what makes us human. The stakes of our investigation extend far beyond academic curiosity. Understanding how we survived past climate extremes may provide crucial insights as we face a future of anthropogenic climate change. The lessons of the Ice Ages have never been more relevant. If the premise of our exploration proves true, that the Ice Ages fundamentally shaped human cognition and culture, it would transform our understanding of ourselves. It would suggest that many traits we consider quintessentially human are adaptations to conditions that no longer exist. Consider language, that defining human characteristic. Some paleoanthropologists now theorize that complex language may have evolved partially in response to Ice Age conditions. When precise communication about resources, dangers, and survival techniques became literally life or death. Or consider our uniquely human capacity for abstract thinking. Did the challenges of planning for long winters, tracking migrating herds across vast distances, and maintaining social bonds through harsh conditions select for brains that could transcend the immediate? Even our emotional lives may bear the imprint of ice. Our capacity for empathy, cooperation, and self-sacrifice might represent adaptations to environments where no individual could survive alone. Where mutual aid wasn't just virtuous, it was necessary. If true, these theories would suggest that the modern human mind is, in essence, an Ice Age adaptation. A cognitive toolkit evolved for survival in conditions of scarcity, unpredictability, and extreme seasonal variation. The implications extend into every aspect of human existence, from our susceptibility to certain psychological disorders to our approaches to politics, economics, and social organization. We may be running Ice Age software on hardware designed for a world that no longer exists. This perspective offers potential insights into contemporary challenges. Why do we struggle with long-term thinking despite having the cognitive capacity for it? Why do we overconsume resources even when we understand the consequences? Our evolutionary history may hold answers. The question becomes not just how we survived the ice, but how the ice survives in us. What adaptations, once crucial for survival, now manifest in our modern lives? And which ancient strategies still serve us well in a rapidly changing world? For individuals, this investigation offers something deeply personal, a connection to our ancestral past, an understanding that the quirks and capabilities we take for granted represent the hard-won adaptations of countless generations who survived against overwhelming odds. The stakes are also scientific. Recent advances in ancient DNA analysis, paleoclimatology, and archaeological dating techniques have provided unprecedented windows into the Middle-Pleistocene, allowing us to test long-standing hypotheses about human evolution. If we can accurately reconstruct the environmental pressures that shaped our species, we gain crucial context for interpreting genetic studies, for understanding why certain traits were selected for and others eliminated, for comprehending the biological foundations of human nature. For indigenous cultures that maintained hunter-gatherer lifestyles into recent centuries, the stakes are different. Their traditional knowledge represents a living connection to Ice Age survival strategies, wisdom increasingly validated by scientific research, yet rapidly disappearing. The ecological stakes cannot be overlooked. As we unravel how past climate changes shaped human evolution, we gain perspective on our current relationship with Earth's systems. including insights into how drastically we've altered the environments that made us. Perhaps most compelling are the philosophical implications. If human consciousness itself was partly forged in response to Ice Age conditions, what does that tell us about the nature of mind? About our perception of time, space, mortality, and meaning? Some paleoanthropologists now suggest that the roots of religion, art, and symbolic thinking can be traced to Ice Age adaptations. That contemplation of mortality, belief in supernatural agencies, and creation of symbolic representations offered survival advantages in harsh conditions. If true, this would suggest that the most transcendent aspects of human experience, our capacity for spirituality, artistic expression, and existential questioning, emerged not separate from our survival needs but because of them, a profound union of necessity and transcendence. As night deepens, keep this question in mind. What if the traits we consider most noble and defining, cooperation, foresight, creativity, compassion, evolved not despite harsh conditions, but because of them? What if adversity itself was the crucible of humanity? The Ice Ages represent the greatest environmental challenge our species has ever faced. In understanding how we met that challenge, we may discover the deepest truths about who we are and who we might yet become. Chapter 3. Earth's Great Pendulum. To comprehend life 700,000 years ago, we must first understand that Earth's climate isn't stable. It oscillates between periods of glaciation and warming, a planetary pendulum swinging with mathematic precision over tens of thousands of years. These climate oscillations are driven by regular variations in Earth's orbit and axis. Known as Milankovitch cycles, they change the amount and distribution of solar energy reaching our planet, creating the rhythm of ice ages and interglacials that has persisted for millions of years. The Middle Pleistocene, our period of focus, marked a critical transition in this rhythm. Prior to about 800,000 years ago, glacial cycles occurred roughly every 41,000 years. But during the Middle Pleistocene, they shifted to approximately 100,000-year cycles. Scientists call this the Mid-Pleistocene transition. It represents one of the most significant climate reorganizations in Earth's recent history, and it coincided with crucial developments in human evolution. During glacial maxima, the coldest periods, ice sheets up to 2 miles thick covered much of North America and northern Europe. Sea levels dropped by up to 400 feet as water became locked in ice, exposing vast continental shelves and creating land bridges between continents. The Mediterranean shrank, connecting Africa to Europe at Gibraltar. Britain attached to continental Europe. Indonesia joined mainland Asia. These geographic transformations created migration corridors for humans and animals alike. But the Middle Pleistocene wasn't uniformly cold. It featured dramatic oscillations between glacial and interglacial states. Some interglacials were warmer than today's climate, with hippos swimming in what is now the Thames River in London. This climate instability was unprecedented in its severity and rapidity, requiring constant adaptation from all life forms. Some thrived, evolving new capabilities. Others perished, leaving only fossil traces of their existence. The world 700,000 years ago hosted ecosystems both familiar and alien to modern eyes. Vast grasslands stretched across Eurasia, supporting massive herds of herbivores. Forests retreated to southern refuges during glacials, expanding rapidly during warming periods. Megafauna dominated these landscapes: woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats. Creatures evolved for cold conditions, with specialized adaptations for survival. Many would eventually fall to extinction as climates changed and humans advanced. Against this backdrop of environmental flux, multiple human species coexisted. Homo erectus, having left Africa perhaps 2 million years earlier, had spread throughout Asia. Their fossils have been found from Georgia to Indonesia, demonstrating remarkable adaptability. In Europe, Homo heidelbergensis emerged with a brain size approaching modern proportions. They would later evolve into Neanderthals, cold specialists with robust bodies perfectly adapted to glacial conditions. Their genetic legacy lives on in many of us today. In Africa, the ancestors of Homo sapiens were evolving, though their exact classification remains debated. Some scientists place them within Homo heidelbergensis, others as early Homo sapiens. The fossil record from this period remains frustratingly incomplete. Meanwhile, other human species flourished in isolated pockets. The diminutive Homo floresiensis, hobbits, on the Indonesian island of Flores, the recently discovered Denisovans in Siberia, and possibly others whose traces have yet to be found. This multi-species world challenges our modern conception of human uniqueness. For most of our evolutionary history, we shared the planet with other thinking, tool-using hominins. Our solitary status as Earth's only human species is an evolutionary anomaly. The Middle Pleistocene also witnessed crucial technological developments. The Acheulean hand axe, a teardrop-shaped stone tool, became widespread, its symmetrical form suggesting not just functional requirements, but possibly aesthetic considerations. Control of fire likely became widespread during this period, though evidence remains contested. The earliest definitive evidence dates to around 400,000 years ago, but circumstantial evidence suggests earlier use. Fire would have been transformative, providing warmth, protection, and cooking. Cooking represents perhaps the most significant technological innovation of this period. It increased the caloric value of food, reduced pathogens, and made tough plant foods digestible. Some anthropologists argue it enabled the evolution of our energy-hungry brains. Evidence for deliberate hunting also appears during the Middle Pleistocene. Wooden spears from Schöningen, Germany, dated to approximately 300,000 years ago, show sophisticated design, with weight distribution similar to modern javelins. But life 700,000 years ago wasn't just about survival technology. Subtle evidence suggests the emergence of symbolic thinking. Unusual collections of objects, pigment use, and possibly the first artistic expressions appear during this period. At Terra Amata in France, a 400,000-year-old site revealed what may be deliberate engravings. At Bildungsleben in Germany, similar aged marks on bone appear too systematic to be accidental. These may represent the dawn of symbolic expression. Social structures were likely complex, involving cooperation and knowledge sharing. The care of injured or elderly individuals, evidenced by healed injuries in fossils, suggests social bonds beyond immediate survival needs. Compassion may be older than our species. Language capabilities remain one of the great mysteries of this period. While no direct evidence exists, indirect clues suggest increasingly complex communication. Cooperative hunting, technology transmission, and social organization would have benefited from sophisticated language. Recent genetic studies indicate that FOXP2, a gene crucial for speech production, evolved to its modern form before the divergence of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, suggesting that some form of complex vocal communication predates our species. As ice sheets advanced and retreated, human populations migrated, adapted, isolated, and reconnected. This dynamic would prove crucial for human evolution, creating opportunities for both specialization and hybridization. By 700,000 years ago, hominins had mastered fire, crafted sophisticated tools, hunted large game, and begun exploring symbolic expression. The foundations for what would become humanity, as we know it, were being laid during one of Earth's most climatically volatile periods. Chapter 4. Footprints in Time. The oldest direct evidence of humans living amidst Ice Age conditions comes not from bones or tools, but from footprints. Impressions left in volcanic ash nearly 800,000 years ago at Happisburgh, England. Fleeting moments preserved through geological fortune, these footprints, discovered in 2013 during a low tide that temporarily exposed ancient sediments, belong to a group of perhaps 5 individuals, including at least one child. They were walking along what was then an estuary when the Thames River flowed into the North Sea. Analysis of the footprints suggests they were made by Homo antecessor, or early Homo heidelbergensis, individuals standing about 5'7" tall, their feet anatomically similar to ours, their stride length and depth revealing a surprisingly modern gait. What makes these footprints extraordinary is their location and timing. Happisburgh sits at 53 degrees north latitude. During a glacial period, This would have been at the very edge of human habitability, the equivalent of living in northern Labrador today. Pollen preserved in the same sediments indicates a coniferous forest environment transitioning to tundra. The climate was cooling, approaching glacial conditions. Winter temperatures would have regularly plunged below freezing. How did these early humans survive in such conditions? They lacked the specialized cold adaptations of Neanderthals. They had no tailored clothing, no complex shelters. Yet somehow, they persisted in a climate that would challenge even modern humans with advanced technology. The answer may lie partly in fire. Though no hearths were preserved at Heidelberg, indirect evidence suggests these humans likely controlled fire. Microscopic charcoal particles in contemporary sediments hint at regular burning. Though whether natural or human-made remains uncertain, recent experimental archaeology has demonstrated that even simple shelters with small fires can maintain survivable temperatures in sub-freezing conditions, suggesting that basic technology could have made northern habitation possible. The Heidelberg humans weren't just surviving, they were exploiting the rich resources of their environment. Stone tools found at the site show butchery marks consistent with processing large mammals, while plant remains suggest gathering of starchy tubers and roots. These findings challenge the notion that early humans were primarily adapted to tropical environments. By 800,000 years ago, our ancestors had developed strategies for thriving in conditions far removed from humanity's African origins. Further evidence comes from Atapuerca, Spain, where the 800,000-year-old remains of Homo antecessor reveal a species already adapted to seasonal European environments. Their anatomy shows a mix of primitive and derived features, including some facial characteristics surprisingly similar to modern humans. What's particularly intriguing about the Atapuerca remains is evidence of cannibalism. Cut marks on bones indicate deliberate defleshing, suggesting that under stress these early humans may have turned to consuming their own kind. This grim finding raises questions about the survival pressures faced during glacial periods. Were such behaviors desperate responses to extreme food shortages, or did they perhaps serve social or ritual functions we can only speculate about? More technological evidence comes from sites across Eurasia. The widespread Acheulean stone tool industry, characterized by carefully shaped hand axes, suggests a shared technological tradition spanning continents. Knowledge transmitted across thousands of generations. These tools weren't just functional, they exhibit a level of craftsmanship beyond mere utility. Some display perfect bilateral symmetry or were made from aesthetically striking materials, hinting at minds concerned with concepts beyond immediate survival needs. At Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel, 790,000-year-old evidence suggests sophisticated resource management. Humans there were processing nuts with stone tools, controlling fire, and exploiting a diverse range of plant and animal resources, showing remarkable ecological knowledge. Perhaps most compelling are sites showing repeated occupation over millennia, places like Boxgrove in England, where humans returned generation after generation, suggesting the transmission of geographical knowledge and the existence of traditional territories. This evidence of cultural transmission, the passing of knowledge across generations, represents a crucial adaptation to Ice Age conditions. In environments where a single mistake could mean death, learned knowledge provided a survival buffer that physical adaptations alone could not. Genetic evidence offers another window into this period. Ancient DNA extracted from cave sediments has revealed the presence of multiple human species in the same regions, often using the same sites at different times, creating a complex palimpsest of human occupation. Recent advances in paleogenetics have allowed scientists to extract human DNA from sediments even when no fossils are present. This environmental DNA has revealed human presence at sites and times previously unknown, dramatically expanding our understanding of early human distribution. The genetic evidence tells a story of populations repeatedly expanding, contracting, and sometimes disappearing entirely as climate conditions changed. Human groups followed retreating glaciers northward during warming periods and fled southward as ice advanced. These migration patterns created opportunities for different human species to encounter one another. Recent genetic studies confirm interbreeding between Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, between Denisovans and both Neanderthals and sapiens, and possibly with other, as yet unidentified human species. This interbreeding challenges our understanding of species boundaries and human identity. Modern non-African humans carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, while some Asian and oceanic populations have up to 6% Denisovan ancestry. We are, in a very real sense, hybrids. The distribution of ice-adapted genes in modern populations tells its own story. Genes for fat metabolism, cold tolerance, and ultraviolet light adaptation show clear signatures of selection during glacial periods. We carry these adaptations in our bodies today. At Denisova Cave in Siberia, one of the most remarkable discoveries of recent years emerged. The remains of a teenage girl whose genome revealed her to be a first-generation hybrid. Her mother was Neanderthal, her father Denisovan. Direct evidence of interbreeding. This discovery transformed our understanding of human interactions during the Pleistocene. Different human species weren't just occasionally encountering one another. They were forming relationships intimate enough to produce offspring. Despite hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution, as evidence accumulates, a more complex picture of Middle Pleistocene humanity emerges. Not of primitive brutes struggling against nature, but of sophisticated beings adapting culturally and biologically to extreme environmental challenges. Developing innovations we still rely on today, but a profound mystery remains at the heart of our investigation. Of all the human species that navigated the ice ages, only one survives today. What made Homo sapiens different? Why did we alone persist while our cousins vanished? Some researchers point to subtle cognitive advantages, others to social structures that proved more resilient under stress. Still others suggest it might have been simple luck, being in the right places when catastrophic climate events occurred. The answer may lie in a fragmented skull discovered in an Ethiopian riverbed, dating to approximately 160,000 years ago during the penultimate glacial period. The Herto skull represents one of the earliest known examples of anatomically modern humans. What's striking about this fossil is how modern it appears. Apart from subtle differences, this individual would not stand out on a modern street. Yet they lived amid Ice Age conditions with technology no more advanced than their Neanderthal contemporaries. Something happened with the emergence of Homo sapiens, something beyond physical adaptation, a cognitive or cultural innovation that would ultimately change the course of Earth's history. But the nature of this advantage remains one of paleoanthropology's greatest unresolved questions. As we stand amidst mounting evidence, a disturbing possibility emerges. Perhaps there was no special advantage. Perhaps our survival, while other human species perished, was not inevitable but contingent. The result of chance events that could easily have gone differently. What if the single human species remaining today is not the culmination of an evolutionary destiny, but merely the last survivor of a diverse human family? What if our solitary status is not evidence of superiority, but the outcome of a planetary lottery? This possibility forces us to reconsider our place in nature, to recognize the fragility of our existence, and to wonder what Earth might look like today if other human species had survived alongside us into the present. As dawn approaches, we've only begun to unravel the mystery of our Ice Age origins. In the hours ahead, we'll explore the cognitive revolution that may have given Homo sapiens their crucial edge, and the climatic catastrophe that nearly ended our story before it truly began. Chapter 5. The timeline problem. As dawn approaches, we must confront troubling contradictions in our understanding of Ice Age humans. The conventional timeline of human technological development contains anomalies that challenge our narrative, discrepancies that suggest either errors in our dating methods or something more profound. Consider the case of Kathu Pan 1 in South Africa. In 2010, archaeologists discovered stone points embedded in animal bones, clear evidence of spear use. The astonishing part? These weapons date to approximately 500,000 years ago. This finding contradicts the established narrative that complex projectile weapons appeared only with Homo sapiens, roughly 300,000 years later. Either earlier humans were more sophisticated than we've acknowledged, or our dating methods are flawed. Neither option fits neatly into current theories. Even more puzzling is the site of Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. Remains initially classified as Neanderthal were redated in 2017 using advanced techniques. The new date? Approximately 315,000 years ago, pushing back the emergence of Homo sapiens by over 100,000 years. These fossils display a mix of modern and archaic features, modern-looking faces attached to elongated brain cases, more typical of earlier humans. They used sophisticated stone tools and controlled fire. Yet they existed during a time when Homo sapiens wasn't supposed to exist at all. The contradictions extend beyond bones to behavior. At Bruniquel Cave in France, archaeologists discovered a carefully constructed ring of broken stalagmites, 336 meters deep inside a cave, showing signs of fire use and dating to an astonishing 176,500 years ago. This discovery is profoundly anomalous because only Neanderthals lived in Europe at this time. The structure's location deep underground required artificial light and planning, suggesting symbolic or ritual behavior previously thought unique to Homo sapiens. The carefully arranged circles serve no obvious practical purpose. They appear deliberately constructed for reasons we can only speculate about, perhaps for ceremony, perhaps as a marker. But whatever their purpose, they suggest minds capable of abstract thought. Similar evidence comes from Spain's La Pasiega cave, where a ladder-like pattern painted in red ochre has been dated to more than 64,000 years ago. Again, predating Homo sapiens in Europe by at least 20,000 years. If these dates are accurate, we must either attribute complex symbolic thinking to Neanderthals or accept that Homo sapiens arrived in Europe far earlier than currently believed. Either conclusion would require rewriting major portions of human evolutionary history. Even more challenging to our timeline is evidence from Blombos Cave in South Africa. There, archaeologists discovered ochre pieces deliberately engraved with geometric patterns, dating to approximately 73,000 years ago during the last glacial period. While this date aligns with the presence of early Homo sapiens, the sophistication of these engravings implies a symbolic capacity that supposedly emerged much later. They suggest a mind already capable of abstract representation, far earlier than previously thought. But the most profound timeline contradiction may lie in genetics rather than archaeology. Recent analysis of ancient DNA suggests that the divergence between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens occurred between 550,000 and 750,000 years ago. This finding places the split far earlier than traditional models suggest and creates an evolutionary gap of hundreds of thousands of years during which the distinctive traits of both species must have developed. If true, it means that for most of the Middle Pleistocene, proto-Neanderthals and proto-sapiens were evolving separately in response to different Ice Age environments. The cold adapted Neanderthals in Europe, our ancestors primarily in Africa, yet genetic evidence also confirms multiple interbreeding events between these divergent lineages, occurring between 60,000 and 40,000 years ago. Fertile hybridization, after hundreds of thousands of years of separate evolution challenges. Conventional species concepts. The timeline contradictions extend to technology as well. The traditional view holds that sophisticated bone tools appeared only with Homo sapiens. Yet sites like Schöningen in Germany yield carefully crafted wooden spears dating to 300,000 years ago. These spears, made by pre-Neanderthals or early Neanderthals, show sophisticated understanding of wood properties and aerodynamics. With weight distributions similar to modern javelins, they represent technological knowledge previously attributed only to our species. Perhaps most puzzling are anomalous sites that seem out of place in both time and space, like Cerruti Mastodon in California, where mastodon bones appear to show evidence of deliberate breakage with stone tools, dating to an extraordinary 130,000 years ago. This date predates the widely accepted timeline for human arrival in the Americas by over 100,000 years. The claim remains highly controversial, with many archaeologists questioning the interpretation. Yet the evidence has withstood several rounds of scrutiny. Similarly anomalous is the Chiquihuite cave site in Mexico, where stone tools have been dated to approximately 30,000 years ago. Predating the Clovis culture, long considered North America's first human inhabitants by some 15,000 years. These findings force us to question whether the peopling of the Americas occurred in multiple waves, perhaps with earlier arrivals failing to establish permanent populations, or whether our dating methods are fundamentally flawed. The conventional narrative of human evolution presents a relatively straightforward progression from primitive to advanced. But the archaeological record increasingly reveals a complex, non-linear pattern of technological innovation, cultural development, and extinction events. Technologies appear, disappear, and sometimes reappear thousands of years later. Symbolic behaviors emerge in isolated contexts, vanish, then re-emerge. This pattern suggests that climate oscillations may have repeatedly reset the cultural clock. As populations contracted, expanded, and sometimes vanished entirely. Consider the case of ochre use. This mineral pigment appears in the archaeological record as early as 285,000 years ago at sites in Kenya, then seems to disappear from some regions, only to reappear with greater frequency after 100,000 years ago. Did knowledge of ochre's properties persist continuously, but leave no archaeological trace? Or was this knowledge independently rediscovered multiple times? The pattern suggests that cultural knowledge was fragile during the Ice Ages, subject to loss during population contractions. Even more troubling for our timeline are sites showing sophisticated behavior that then vanishes. At Pinnacle Point in South Africa, humans were heat-treating stone to improve its flaking properties 164,000 years ago. A technology that then disappears from the record for tens of thousands of years. These discontinuities challenge progressive models of human development and suggest that Ice Age climate volatility may have repeatedly destroyed cultural knowledge, creating a pattern of technological fits and starts rather than steady advancement. The most profound timeline contradiction may come from genetic studies of modern humans. These reveal population bottlenecks so severe that our species nearly went extinct approximately 70,000 years ago, possibly due to the supereruption of Mount Toba in Indonesia. Some genetic analyses suggest the human population may have dropped to fewer than 10,000 reproductive individuals, a catastrophic collapse that would have obliterated countless cultural traditions and technological knowledge, essentially resetting human development. If this genetic bottleneck model is correct, much of what we consider uniquely human may have emerged only after this near-extinction event, making modern human behavior much younger than the anatomically modern human body. A profound disconnect between physical and cultural evolution. As these contradictions accumulate, a troubling possibility emerges. Perhaps our understanding of Ice Age humanity is fundamentally flawed, built on incomplete evidence and assumptions that no longer hold. The timeline we've constructed may be more fiction than fact. The implications are profound. If we've miscalculated the timeline of human cognitive and cultural evolution, then our understanding of what makes us human, and when those traits emerged, requires radical revision. Chapter 6. Memories of Ice. Throughout human cultures, myths persist about a time of ice and darkness. Stories passed down through countless generations, describing conditions that seem to echo the last glacial maximum. Could these represent cultural memories preserved through tens of thousands of years? The Finnish epic Kalevala describes a time when the moon was stolen from the sky and fire from the homes of people, a period of darkness and cold that threatened all life. A poetic description that parallels the harsh conditions of glacial periods. Indigenous Australian traditions speak of a time when sea levels were much lower, describing now submerged landscapes in remarkable detail. Modern seafloor mapping has confirmed the accuracy of these oral histories, suggesting cultural transmission spanning at least 10,000 years. Across Native American cultures, stories describe massive floods as ice melted and sea levels rose. The Inuits speak of a time when the land was covered in ice. The persistence of these narratives across disconnected cultures hints at preserved observations of post-glacial environmental changes. Perhaps most intriguing are persistent myths of previous human worlds or civilizations destroyed by cataclysms. The Hindu concept of yugas describes cyclical ages of human development and decline, paralleling the actual cyclical pattern of glacial and interglacial periods. Greek mythology speaks of previous ages of humanity, each ended by disaster, while Hesiod's Works and Days describes a golden age followed by silver, bronze, and iron ages, each less advanced than the one before, a pattern that inverts our notion of continuous progress. Indigenous Australian traditions describe previous worlds or epochs, separated by transformative events. Their concept of dream time includes memories of extinct megafauna, confirmed by paleontological discoveries. Cultural memories preserved potentially for tens of thousands of years. Norse mythology describes Fimbulwinter, a terrible winter lasting 3 years that precedes Ragnarok, a climatic catastrophe reminiscent of Heinrich events, rapid cooling periods during the last ice age, when massive armadas of icebergs broke off glaciers, cooling northern Europe. These mythological parallels don't prove direct transmission of Ice Age memories, but they suggest that extreme climate events leave deep impressions on cultural consciousness, impressions that may persist, albeit transformed, for millennia. While myths present tantalizing but ambiguous connections to the Ice Age, archaeological evidence contains more concrete anomalies, findings that don't fit neatly into our understanding of Ice Age human capabilities. Objects seemingly out of place in time. Consider the Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel, a figurine carved from mammoth ivory. Discovered in Germany and dating to approximately 35,000 to 40,000 years ago, it depicts a human body with a lion's head, a therianthrope or human-animal hybrid. This sculpture represents not just artistic skill, but abstract thinking, the ability to imagine something that does not exist in nature. It suggests a mind capable of symbolic thought, ritual, and possibly complex religious concepts, far earlier than previously believed. Even more remarkable are the Blombos cave beads, tiny shells deliberately pierced to create ornaments, dating to approximately 75,000 years ago. Required not just technical skill, but a concept of personal adornment and possibly social signaling. These beads emerged during a glacial period when survival pressures would have been intense. Yet their makers devoted precious time and energy to creating objects with no practical survival value, suggesting social and symbolic motivations trumped immediate practical concerns. At Bruniquel Cave in France, the previously mentioned stalagmite structures contain another anomaly: bare bones deliberately placed within the circular structures, some showing evidence of burning, suggesting ritual activity by Neanderthals 176,500 years ago. This finding forces us to reconsider our assumptions about Neanderthal cognitive capabilities. If they were engaging in symbolic behaviors deep underground, what other aspects of their mental lives have we underestimated? What might they have been capable of that left no archaeological trace? Perhaps the most controversial out-of-place evidence comes from underwater archaeology. As sea levels have risen approximately 120 meters since the last glacial maximum, vast areas of former coastline now lie submerged, including any settlements that may have existed there. Recent underwater explorations have revealed structures like Atlit Yam off Israel's coast, a submerged settlement dating to approximately 9,000 years ago, complete with stone circles, dwellings, and human burials, preserved beneath the waves. These discoveries highlight a crucial bias in our archaeological record. We find sites where preservation conditions are favorable and where archaeologists look, not necessarily where ancient humans primarily lived. If, as many anthropologists believe, coastal regions were preferred habitats for early humans, then most evidence of Ice Age occupation now lies underwater, creating a fundamentally incomplete picture of human capabilities during this period. This coastal migration theory suggests that early humans followed coastlines during their global dispersal, exploiting abundant marine resources. The evidence for this hypothesis remains largely inaccessible, submerged under tens of meters of water. Emerging technologies are beginning to address this gap. Marine archaeology, satellite imagery, and predictive modeling are identifying submerged landscapes with high potential for containing archaeological sites, areas that may fundamentally alter our understanding of Ice Age humanity. Out-of-place evidence extends to genetic anomalies as well. Recent studies of Denisovan DNA show they possessed genetic adaptations for high-altitude survival. Yet all known Denisovan fossils come from low-altitude sites. This suggests Denisovans must have lived at high elevations long enough to evolve these adaptations, yet we've found no archaeological evidence of their presence in mountainous regions. Another example of the incomplete nature of our current understanding. Even more puzzling is the discovery that modern Tibetans inherited their high-altitude adaptation gene from Denisovans. This implies not just contact, but successful interbreeding between these different human species in harsh, high-altitude environments, a scenario not previously considered possible. Recent genetic studies reveal another anomaly, evidence of an as-yet unidentified human species that interbred with Denisovans. A ghost population known only from its genetic legacy. Its physical appearance, technology, and way of life remain complete mysteries. This unknown hominin represents perhaps the most profound gap in our knowledge. An entire human species that existed during the Ice Age, interbred with other humans, yet left so few traces that we know of its existence only through genetic echoes. As we combine these myths and anomalies, a disturbing possibility emerges. Perhaps the conventional narrative of human evolution, a relatively straight line from primitive to advanced, fundamentally misrepresents our past. Perhaps the truth is far stranger. What if human capabilities have fluctuated dramatically over time, rising during favorable periods only to collapse during climatic catastrophes? What if sophisticated cultures have emerged and vanished multiple times, leaving only fragmentary evidence of their existence? This possibility, that human history may be cyclical rather than progressive, challenges our deepest assumptions. It suggests that our current technological civilization may not be the first time humans have developed complex cultures, though it may be the most globally extensive. The concept of lost civilizations has long been relegated to fringe archaeology. But the evidence increasingly suggests that significant human achievements may indeed have been lost, not through supernatural means, but through the brutal efficiency of natural processes. Consider how little would remain of our own civilization after 100,000 years of erosion, glaciation, sea level changes, and soil formation. How fragmentary and mysterious those remains would appear to future archaeologists. How easily our achievements could be erased by time. Now consider what evidence might have been lost from the 99% of human history that transpired before written records. The countless innovations, beliefs, and ways of life that may have left no trace. Our understanding of Ice Age humanity may be not just incomplete, but fundamentally flawed. As night deepens, these anomalies and myths converge toward a troubling question. What if the most important aspects of Ice Age human experience, their thoughts, beliefs, innovations, and social structures, have left almost no archaeological trace? What if we've been looking at shadows and calling them substance? Chapter 7. The Catastrophe Horizon. As we approach the midpoint of our journey through Ice Age humanity, the stakes of our investigation must be confronted. The evidence suggests that climate change during the Pleistocene wasn't just a background condition. It was an active force that repeatedly threatened human extinction. Recent genetic studies confirm that approximately 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens experienced a population bottleneck so severe that our entire species was reduced to perhaps a few thousand breeding individuals, a catastrophic collapse that brought humanity to the brink of extinction. This near-extinction event coincides with the Toba supervolcano eruption in Indonesia, the largest volcanic event of the past 2.8 million years. It ejected approximately 2,800 cubic kilometers of material, enough to cover the entire United States in a layer 15 centimeters thick. The atmospheric effects were devastating. Global temperatures dropped by 3 to 5 degrees Celsius for years, creating what scientists call a volcanic winter. The timing of this cataclysm correlates precisely with the genetic bottleneck identified in human DNA. This revelation transforms our understanding of human history. Every person alive today, regardless of ancestry, geography, or ethnicity, descends from this small population of survivors. We are all children of catastrophe, the inheritors of strategies that allowed survival against near impossible odds. The implications are profound. Many of our distinctive human traits, our adaptability, our capacity for innovation under pressure, our ability to cooperate in crisis, may represent adaptations that emerged or intensified during this existential threat. But Toba wasn't the only catastrophe our ancestors faced. The Ice Age climate was punctuated by events called Dansgaard-Oeschger events and Heinrich events. Rapid warming or cooling periods when temperatures could change by up to 8 degrees Celsius within a human lifetime. Imagine the challenge of adapting to temperature changes of that magnitude within decades. Entire ecosystems would transform. Animal migrations would alter. Plant communities would collapse and reform. The very foundations of survival would shift beneath your feet. Recent evidence from Greenland ice cores and ocean sediments suggests these climate oscillations were more frequent and severe than previously understood, creating a world where environmental predictability, something we take for granted, simply did not exist. This climatic volatility presents a profound evolutionary challenge. Most species adapt to specific environmental conditions, but Ice Age humans faced conditions that changed too rapidly for genetic adaptation. They needed a different solution. That solution appears to have been behavioral flexibility, supported by cultural innovation. The ability to change strategies, technologies, and social organizations in response to changing conditions, to transmit successful adaptations not through genes but through learning. This capacity for cultural adaptation may be humanity's defining feature, more than our physical traits, more than any specific technology. The ability to collectively solve problems and transmit solutions across generations became our evolutionary superpower. But this cultural adaptation carried risks of its own. Unlike genetic adaptations, cultural knowledge can be lost. When populations collapse, when elders die before transmitting their knowledge, when groups become isolated. Cultural extinction can occur even when genetic lineages survive. Evidence for such cultural loss appears throughout the archaeological record. Technologies appear and then vanish. Artistic traditions flourish and then disappear, suggesting that Ice Age climate volatility repeatedly reset human cultural development. The stakes of our investigation thus become clearer. We are not merely studying past adaptations, we are uncovering the evolutionary crucible that forged human nature itself, the environmental pressures that selected for our most distinctive traits. And as modern climate change accelerates, understanding this relationship between climatic volatility and human evolution takes on new urgency. We are conducting an unintended experiment with our planet's climate, one with profound implications for our future. Unlike our Ice Age ancestors, we now possess the technological capability to significantly alter Earth's climate. But do we possess the wisdom to wield this power? The Ice Age record suggests that climate stability has been the exception, not the rule, during human evolution. The stakes escalate further when we consider recent anthropological theories about the development of human consciousness itself. Some researchers now suggest that our distinctive form of self-awareness emerged as an adaptation to climate volatility. This hypothesis proposes that the ability to mentally time travel, to remember the past and imagine the future, provided crucial advantages in unpredictable environments, allowing humans to prepare for conditions they had experienced before or might reasonably anticipate. If true, this would suggest that human consciousness as we experience it, our sense of self extending through time, Our capacity for episodic memory and future planning may itself be an Ice Age adaptation, a cognitive tool forged by glacial conditions. The implications extend to our deepest existential questions: our awareness of mortality, our search for meaning, our capacity for abstract thought. These may represent emergent properties of minds evolved to survive in conditions of extreme environmental uncertainty. Recent neurological studies support aspects of this theory. The same brain networks activated during episodic memory are also engaged during future planning, suggesting that remembering and forecasting may be two aspects of the same cognitive adaptation. This perspective transforms how we understand Ice Age art. The famous cave paintings of Lascaux and Altamira may represent more than aesthetic expression. They may have served as educational tools, visual records of animal behaviors and migration patterns crucial for survival. Similarly, the Venus figurines found across Ice Age Europe, small statuettes emphasizing female reproductive characteristics, may represent more than fertility symbols. They may have encoded knowledge about survival during pregnancy and childbirth in harsh conditions. The stakes of our investigation thus include our most fundamental human characteristics. If Ice Age conditions selected for the cognitive and cultural traits we consider uniquely human, then understanding this period becomes crucial to understanding ourselves. But the greatest stakes may lie in what the Ice Age record reveals about human vulnerability and resilience. The evidence increasingly suggests that humanity has teetered on the edge of extinction multiple times, surviving through a combination of adaptability, cooperation, and chance. This realization challenges triumphalist narratives of human dominance. We are not the inevitable masters of Earth. We are survivors of catastrophes that nearly ended our story before it properly began. Our existence remains contingent, not guaranteed. Yet the same record reveals extraordinary resilience, the ability to adapt to conditions ranging from tropical forests to Arctic tundra, to develop technologies suited to each environment, to create social structures that enhance survival through cooperation. This duality, extreme vulnerability coupled with remarkable adaptability, may represent humanity's defining paradox. We are simultaneously the most fragile and the most resilient of species, capable of both tragic failure and astonishing innovation. As evidence accumulates, a disturbing hypothesis emerges. What if the rapid climate oscillations of the Pleistocene selected not just for general adaptability, but specifically for traits that enabled survival during periods of extreme environmental stress? This would suggest that many of our most distinctive characteristics, our capacity for both cooperation and violence, our tendency toward both resource conservation and overconsumption, our ability to plan for the future yet discount long-term consequences, represent adaptations to conditions of feast or famine. Such adaptations would be perfectly suited to an Ice Age world of unpredictable resources, but potentially maladaptive in an era of abundance, perhaps explaining some of the contradictions in modern human behavior. The stakes thus extend beyond archaeology into psychology, economics, and ethics. Understanding our Ice Age inheritance may be crucial to addressing contemporary challenges, from resource management to conflict resolution to mental health. Perhaps most profound is the evidence that humans have significantly altered Earth's climate before. Recent studies suggest that early agriculture and deforestation may have begun changing atmospheric composition thousands of years earlier than previously thought, potentially delaying the onset of the next glacial period. This revelation transforms our understanding of the Anthropocene, the current geological age defined by human influence. It suggests that humanity's relationship with climate has always been bidirectional. We shape the climate, and the climate shapes us. As we prepare to enter the final phase of our investigation, the ultimate stakes come into focus. Understanding the relationship between climate change and human evolution may be crucial not just for interpreting our past, but for navigating our future. The Ice Age record contains both warnings and inspirations, evidence of catastrophic failure and remarkable resilience. As we face unprecedented anthropogenic climate change, these lessons from our evolutionary history have never been more relevant. In the hours ahead, we'll explore the most controversial evidence yet. Findings that suggest Ice Age humans may have possessed capabilities far beyond what conventional archaeology acknowledges. And we'll examine how close our species truly came to extinction during the last glacial maximum. But first, we must confront the most enigmatic Ice Age humans of all, the Denisovans, known almost exclusively from DNA rather than fossils, yet whose genetic legacy includes adaptations still crucial for millions of people living at high altitudes today. Their story represents perhaps the greatest mystery in human evolution, a human species known primarily through its genetic echoes, whose physical appearance remained unknown until recently, yet whose adaptations may have saved countless human lives. As dawn approaches, prepare for revelations that challenge not just what we know about Ice Age humanity, but what we thought we knew about ourselves. For in the crucible of ice, the most fundamental aspects of human nature were forged, creating the template for all we would become. Chapter 8: Crucibles of Mind. As dawn breaks on our exploration of Ice Age humanity, we must confront the central question that has guided our journey. What was the true relationship between climate extremes and human evolution? How did the Ice Ages shape what we would become? Three major theories have emerged to explain this relationship, each supported by compelling evidence, each with profound implications for our understanding of human nature. Let us examine them carefully, weighing their merits and limitations. The first and most established theory is the climate variability hypothesis. It proposes that the rapid climate oscillations of the Pleistocene selected specifically for behavioral flexibility and innovation, creating evolutionary pressure for larger brains and complex social learning. According to this theory, the Ice Ages created a unique evolutionary landscape. Environments changed too quickly for genetic adaptation alone to suffice, yet changed predictably enough that cultural adaptations could evolve to anticipate seasonal and cyclical variations. This created a cognitive niche that favored individuals who could mentally model environmental patterns, who could remember past conditions and project future scenarios, who could communicate complex information and cooperate to implement adaptive strategies. The evidence for this theory is substantial. The human brain expanded dramatically during the Pleistocene, particularly the prefrontal cortex, associated with planning and executive function. Brain regions involved in social cognition and language also developed significantly. Archaeological evidence shows increasingly sophisticated technological responses to environmental challenges, from specialized hunting tools to tailored clothing to complex shelters, all requiring cultural transmission of knowledge across generations. The timing aligns remarkably well. The most rapid periods of brain expansion coincide with times of greatest climate volatility, suggesting a direct evolutionary response to environmental unpredictability. Potts, who formalized this hypothesis, argues that human evolution represents a unique adaptive strategy, not specialization for particular environments, but specialization for adaptability itself. A meta-adaptation that would eventually enable global colonization. But this theory has limitations. It doesn't fully explain why only hominins developed this strategy, while other mammals exposed to the same conditions did not. Nor does it account for the specific cognitive capacities that seem uniquely human. The second major theory takes a different approach. The ecological dominant social competition hypothesis proposes that while climate variability initiated human cognitive evolution, it was competition between humans themselves that drove its later acceleration. According to this theory, once early humans achieved a certain level of ecological dominance through tool use, cooperation, and fire control, the primary selective pressure shifted from environmental challenges to social competition, creating an evolutionary arms race of cognitive capabilities. As Alexander, who developed this hypothesis, explains, once humans became relatively buffered from environmental threats, other humans became both their greatest allies and greatest competitors, creating selection for increasingly sophisticated social intelligence. This would explain why human cognitive evolution accelerated rather than plateaued once basic adaptation was achieved. and why humans developed capabilities far beyond what survival strictly required. Our oversized brains became weapons in social competition. Evidence for this theory comes from neuroimaging studies showing that the same brain regions involved in strategic thinking activate during both environmental problem-solving and social interactions, suggesting shared cognitive foundations. Further support comes from the extraordinary development of human deception capabilities, reputation management, and moral emotions. Traits that make little sense as adaptations to physical environments, but are crucial for navigating complex social landscapes. The timing again proves suggestive. The most dramatic expansion of human brain size coincides with periods when multiple human species coexisted, creating potential for both cooperation and competition on unprecedented scales. However, this theory also has limitations. It struggles to explain why only humans developed such extreme sociality, and it doesn't fully account for uniquely human traits like art, ritual, and existential questioning. The third and most controversial theory offers a radical perspective. The cataclysmic adaptation hypothesis suggests that human cognitive uniqueness emerged specifically in response to catastrophic climate events, not gradual change but sudden, extinction-threatening disasters. This hypothesis, advanced by researchers like Ambrose, proposes that near-extinction events, like the Toba supervolcano eruption 74,000 years ago, created extreme selective pressure, drastically reducing human populations and favoring specific cognitive adaptations for survival. According to this theory, modern human behavior emerged rapidly rather than gradually, as the result of population bottlenecks that eliminated most genetic diversity, allowing beneficial mutations to spread quickly through the surviving population. Evidence for this hypothesis comes from genetic studies confirming multiple population bottlenecks in human history, particularly one between 70,000 to 60,000 years ago so severe that all non-African humans today descend from a population of perhaps a few thousand individuals. Archaeological evidence also shows discontinuities in human cultural development, with sophisticated technologies and symbolic behaviors appearing suddenly in the record, often following periods of apparent population decline. The timing is particularly suggestive for the emergence of behavioral modernity. The suite of traits including symbolic art, ritual, complex language, and long-distance trade networks appears relatively suddenly in the archaeological record after 70,000 years ago. This corresponds precisely with the aftermath of the Toba supervolcano, suggesting that modern human behavior may have emerged as a specific adaptation to post-catastrophe conditions, a cognitive toolkit for rebuilding populations from near extinction. However, this theory remains controversial. It challenges gradualist models of evolution, and it's difficult to test, as catastrophes by definition leave sparse archaeological evidence. The survivors' stories largely erased by the very events that shaped them. As we weigh these competing theories, it becomes clear that they need not be mutually exclusive. Each may capture different aspects of the complex relationship between climate and human evolution, together forming a more complete picture than any single explanation. Climate variability may have initiated the evolutionary trajectory toward behavioral flexibility. Social competition may have accelerated cognitive development once basic ecological dominance was achieved, and catastrophic events may have created genetic and cultural bottlenecks that transformed human capabilities. What emerges is a multi-layered understanding of how Ice Age conditions shaped humanity, not through a single mechanism, but through a complex interplay of environmental pressures, social dynamics, and catastrophic filters, each leaving its imprint on our species. Perhaps most important is what these theories collectively suggest: that human uniqueness emerged not in spite of adversity, but because of it. That the very conditions that threatened our existence also created the cognitive capabilities that would ultimately define us. Chapter 9. Beyond Bones. Recent scientific breakthroughs have transformed our understanding of Ice Age humans, moving beyond traditional archaeological approaches to reveal aspects of ancient lives previously hidden from view. creating both new insights and new paradoxes. Perhaps the most revolutionary advancement has been in ancient DNA analysis. Techniques that once required well-preserved fossils can now extract human DNA from cave sediments, revealing the presence of ancient humans even where no bones survive. This sedimentary DNA has rewritten the timeline of human presence across continents, showing that Neanderthals and Denisovans occupied sites thousands of years earlier than fossil evidence suggested, and identifying human presence at sites where no physical remains have been found. Even more groundbreaking has been the ability to reconstruct phenotypic traits from DNA alone. Scientists recently created a physical reconstruction of a Denisovan girl using only DNA methylation patterns, revealing a human species with distinctive physical features. These techniques have uncovered startling revelations about Ice Age human diversity. Recent genetic studies confirm at least 4 distinct human species coexisted during the late Pleistocene: Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and the diminutive Homo floresiensis. Evidence suggests even greater diversity. Genetic analysis indicates at least one additional, currently unknown human species interbred with Denisovans, while anomalous fossils from China suggest the possibility of other distinct lineages. This creates a profound paradox. If multiple human species coexisted for hundreds of thousands of years, why do we find ourselves alone today? What evolutionary pressures eliminated every human lineage except our own? New paleoclimatic reconstructions offer potential insights. Advanced ice core analysis now allows scientists to reconstruct temperatures at annual or even seasonal resolution, revealing climate fluctuations more extreme and rapid than previously recognized. These reconstructions show that the period between 60,000 and 30,000 years ago experienced particularly severe climate instability, precisely when multiple human species faced their final decline, suggesting a potential connection between climate volatility and extinction. Yet this creates another paradox. If Neanderthals had already survived hundreds of thousands of years of climate fluctuations, including previous glacial maxima, why would they succumb to climate pressures precisely when modern humans were expanding? Emerging archaeological science offers another perspective. New residue analysis techniques can identify microscopic traces of organic materials on stone tools, revealing how different human species utilized resources. These analyses show that while Neanderthals primarily exploited large terrestrial mammals, early modern humans utilized more diverse food sources, including small game, fish, and plant foods, creating greater resilience against resource fluctuations. Advanced dating methods have resolved another long-standing paradox: the apparent simultaneity of Neanderthal disappearance across widely separated regions. New high-precision dating reveals they actually disappeared at different times in different places. This pattern aligns with modern human expansion, suggesting competitive exclusion rather than catastrophic extinction. Yet paradoxically, genetic evidence confirms interbreeding between these species. They weren't just competing, they were mating. This creates perhaps the most profound paradox in human evolution. How could populations be simultaneously replacing each other and interbreeding? The answer requires a fundamental reconsideration of what constitutes a species in human evolution. Recent genomic studies reveal that approximately 20% of the Neanderthal genome persists in modern humans collectively, though individual non-Africans carry only 1–4%, suggesting their extinction was genetic absorption rather than complete replacement. Similar patterns appear with Denisovans, whose genetic legacy includes crucial adaptations for high-altitude survival in Tibetans and immune system variants in Pacific Islanders. Their physical extinction belies their genetic survival through hybridization. This creates a new understanding of human evolution during the Ice Ages, not a simple linear progression from primitive to advanced, but a complex network of interacting populations, exchanging genes, technologies, and cultural innovations. Neurological research adds another dimension to our understanding. Advanced brain imaging can identify which neural networks activate during different cognitive tasks. allowing scientists to hypothesize about the evolution of specific cognitive capabilities. These studies reveal that planning for the future activates the same brain regions as remembering the past, suggesting that human episodic memory may have evolved primarily as a way to simulate possible futures, an adaptation ideally suited to unpredictable environments. Similarly, the brain regions involved in tool-making overlap significantly with those used for language processing, suggesting that technological and linguistic capabilities may have co-evolved, each supporting the development of the other. This creates a cognitive paradox. Many capabilities we consider uniquely human, like symbolic thought, complex language, and artistic expression, may have evolved not for their current functions, but as adaptations to Ice Age survival challenges. Perhaps most revolutionary has been the development of ancient protein analysis. While DNA degrades relatively quickly, proteins can survive for millions of years, allowing identification of species from fossils too old for DNA recovery. This technique recently identified a human fossil from Siahi, China, as Denisovan. Despite being found far from the Siberian cave where Denisovans were first identified, dramatically expanding their known range. But the most profound scientific advancement may be in our understanding of human cognitive evolution itself. New research suggests that human intelligence isn't a single adaptation, but a mosaic of capabilities, each potentially responding to different evolutionary pressures. This perspective resolves the paradox of human uniqueness. Our distinctiveness lies not in any single ability, but in the particular combination of capabilities. A cognitive toolkit uniquely suited to navigating both environmental and social challenges. The emerging synthesis suggests that Ice Age conditions created selection pressure for three key cognitive adaptations: strategic planning in fluctuating environments, social cooperation during resource scarcity, and cultural transmission of survival knowledge. These adaptations required specific neurological capabilities, enhanced working memory for tracking environmental patterns, theory of mind for social coordination, and symbolic thought for efficient information transmission. Together, these capabilities enabled a new evolutionary strategy: the ability to respond to environmental challenges not through genetic adaptation over generations, but through cultural innovation within lifetimes, a fundamental shift in adaptation mechanisms. This strategy proved extraordinarily successful during the climate volatility of the late Pleistocene, allowing Homo sapiens to expand into virtually every environment on Earth, including regions that had defeated previous human species. Yet this success creates the final and perhaps most troubling paradox of our investigation. The very adaptations that enabled our survival during natural climate fluctuations have now created the capacity to artificially alter Earth's climate. We have become agents of the very forces that shaped us. As we face anthropogenic climate change, understanding this paradox becomes crucial. Our evolved psychology, adapted for immediate environmental threats, struggles to respond appropriately to gradual collective challenges, creating a mismatch between our cognitive tools and current problems. Yet the archaeological record also reveals human resilience in the face of environmental transformation, the capacity to innovate, cooperate, and adapt. These same capabilities, directed consciously, may offer solutions to the very problems they have created. The new science of Ice Age humanity thus offers both warnings and hope. We are products of climate change, shaped by environmental pressures we now replicate on a global scale. Yet, we also inherit cognitive capabilities that evolved specifically to navigate environmental transformation. Chapter 10: The Crucible of Consciousness. Throughout our journey, we've been circling a central mystery. What was it about Ice Age conditions that shaped humanity so profoundly? What specific evolutionary pressures created the cognitive capabilities we now consider uniquely human? The evidence we've examined points toward a remarkable conclusion. Human consciousness as we experience it, our capacity for self-awareness, mental time travel, symbolic thought, and meaning-making, may represent specific adaptations to Ice Age conditions. The traditional view holds that human consciousness emerged gradually through general intelligence increases, but mounting evidence suggests a more specific evolutionary trajectory, one intimately tied to the unique challenges of surviving climate volatility. Consider first our extraordinary capacity for mental time travel, the ability to vividly recall past experiences and project ourselves into imagined futures. This capability appears uniquely developed in humans compared to other primates. Neurological research confirms that episodic memory and future simulation activate the same brain networks, suggesting they represent two aspects of a single cognitive adaptation, one perfectly suited to environments with predictable seasonal patterns, but unpredictable. In Ice Age environments, this capability would have been invaluable, allowing humans to prepare for winter during summer abundance, to anticipate migration patterns based on past observations, to transmit knowledge about rare but devastating events across generations. The archaeological evidence supports this connection. The most sophisticated Ice Age technologies, like complex hunting weapons, tailored clothing, and planned settlements, all required mental projection across time, the ability to work in the present for future benefit. This temporal consciousness would have provided enormous survival advantages during climate oscillations. But it came with a profound side effect: awareness of personal mortality. The recognition that one's existence extends into the future only until death. This awareness is reflected in Ice Age burials beginning around 100,000 years ago. The deliberate interment of the dead with grave goods suggesting belief in an afterlife. The earliest archaeological evidence of existential consciousness. A second distinctive aspect of human consciousness is symbolic thinking, the ability to create arbitrary associations between signs and meanings, to represent reality through language, art, and abstract concepts. The earliest definitive evidence for symbolism appears during glacial periods. Ochre processing at Blombos Cave 70,000 years ago. Deliberate engravings at sites across Africa and Eurasia. Shell beads used for personal adornment during the last glacial period. In Ice Age environments, symbolic communication would have been adaptively valuable, allowing precise transmission of survival information, enabling coordination of group activities across time and space, facilitating the teaching of complex technological skills. But symbolic thinking transcended mere survival utility. It enabled humans to create shared conceptual worlds, to develop myths, rituals, and belief systems, to find meaning in an environment characterized by beauty, abundance, danger, and scarcity. The cave art of the Upper Paleolithic, those magnificent paintings of animals, humans, and abstract symbols, represents the flowering of this symbolic consciousness. Created during the harshest period of the last Ice Age, 30,000, 15,000 years ago. Recent analysis suggests these paintings weren't merely decorative. Many appear in acoustic chambers, where sound resonates in particular ways. They often depict animals at specific life stages or seasonal conditions. They may represent complex information systems disguised as art. A third distinctive element of human consciousness is our hypersociality. Our extraordinary capacity for empathy, reputation tracking, norm enforcement, and cooperative action. Abilities that far exceed those of other primates. The archaeological evidence shows increasingly complex social organization throughout the Ice Ages, from the cooperative hunting of large mammals to the construction of semi-permanent settlements, to long-distance trade networks spanning hundreds of kilometers. In glacial environments, this hypersociality would have been literally life-saving. No individual could survive a northern winter alone. Cooperation wasn't just beneficial, it was necessary for survival, creating intense selection pressure for social intelligence. The final element of human consciousness is perhaps the most profound: metacognition. Our ability to think about thinking, to reflect on our own mental processes, to question our assumptions and consider alternative perspectives. In environments characterized by rapid change, metacognition would have provided crucial adaptability. The ability to recognize when strategies were failing, to consciously develop new approaches, to teach innovations to others. Together, These cognitive adaptations, mental time travel, symbolic thinking, hypersociality, and metacognition, constitute the core of human consciousness as we experience it, and all appear specifically adaptive to the environmental challenges of the Ice Ages. This leads us to the central revelation of our investigation. Human consciousness itself may represent an Ice Age adaptation. A specific cognitive toolkit evolved for survival in environments characterized by resource volatility, seasonal extremes, and unpredictable climate shifts. This perspective transforms our understanding of what it means to be human. Our most distinctive mental capabilities, the very features we often consider transcendent or spiritual, may have emerged from the practical demands of Ice Age survival. Yet paradoxically, these practical adaptations enabled capacities that transcended mere survival. The ability to create that moves us millennia later. To contemplate our place in the cosmos, to imagine worlds beyond the one we perceive. The implications are profound. The human mind was forged in direct response to environmental conditions that no longer exist. We now navigate a world of unprecedented stability and abundance, with cognitive tools evolved for volatility and scarcity. This mismatch may explain many aspects of modern human behavior. Our struggle with long-term thinking, despite having the cognitive capacity for it. Our tendency toward overconsumption, despite understanding the consequences. Our difficulty grasping gradual collective threats. But it also explains our greatest strengths, our extraordinary adaptability to new environments, our ability to cooperate in groups of unprecedented size, our capacity for innovation in response to challenges, all Ice Age adaptations that continue to serve us. As we face anthropogenic climate change, a transformation we have ourselves initiated, understanding this evolutionary legacy becomes crucial. The very cognitive tools that enabled our ancestors to survive climate volatility must now be consciously directed towards sustainability. The final revelation of our journey is both humbling and empowering. We are not separate from nature, but intimately shaped by it. The most ethereal aspects of our consciousness emerged from the most practical survival requirements. Transcendence born from necessity. In the Ice Age crucible, humanity discovered that survival required more than just physical adaptation. It required imagination, the ability to see what is not yet present. Cooperation, the ability to act as more than individuals, and meaning, the ability to persist despite hardship. These capabilities, evolved for survival, have become the foundation of everything we consider uniquely human. Our art, our science, our technology, our spirituality, all emerging from cognitive adaptations forged in relation to ice and cold and scarcity. As the Earth now warms due to human activity, we confront a profound question. Can cognitive adaptations evolved for one type of climate challenge help us address a completely different one? Can Ice Age minds solve warming world problems? The answer remains uncertain, but the Ice Age record provides reason for both concern and hope. It reveals our capacity for both disastrous failure and remarkable resilience, for both short-sightedness and innovation, for both selfishness and profound cooperation. In the end, our journey through Ice Age humanity reveals not just who we were, but who we are. Children of the ice, shaped by climate challenges we can barely imagine. Carrying within our minds the adaptations that enabled our ancestors' survival. As we move forward into an uncertain climatic future, this understanding becomes not just academically interesting, but practically essential. For in knowing how climate shaped humanity, we gain insight into how humanity might wisely shape climate. Becoming conscious stewards rather than unconscious disruptors, the Ice Ages have never truly ended. They live on in our bodies, our behaviors, and most fundamentally, in our minds. The great revelation is not what the ice did to us, but what it made of us. Conscious beings capable of contemplating our own origins. As our journey concludes, we return to where we began. Imagine once more standing at the edge of a vast ice sheet, the wind cutting through layers of fur and hide, the horizon stretching endlessly white beneath a pale sun. This world, so alien to modern experience, represents the environment that shaped humanity's most distinctive qualities, the crucible in which consciousness itself was forged. Through adaptations to challenges we can barely comprehend today, yet we carry this legacy within us, in our bodies, adapted to conserve heat in specific ways, in our behaviors tuned to patterns of resource abundance and scarcity, and in our minds evolved to navigate both physical landscapes and social complexities. The great paradox of human existence emerges from this understanding. We are simultaneously the most fragile and most resilient of species, physically vulnerable yet cognitively adaptable. Dependent on technology, yet capable of thriving in virtually any environment. This duality, vulnerability and resilience, defines the human condition. It explains both our greatest achievements and our most persistent struggles. It reveals why we are capable of both astonishing cooperation and devastating conflict. As we face the challenges of the Anthropocene, an age defined by human influence on Earth systems, understanding our evolutionary heritage becomes not just intellectually satisfying, but practically essential. For the cognitive tools that enabled Ice Age survival must now be directed toward planetary stewardship. Perhaps in this lies our species' ultimate test. Can adaptations evolved for responding to climate change help us mitigate climate change of our own making? Can Ice Age minds industrial solutions? The answer remains unwritten. But in understanding where we came from, we gain insight into who we are and who we might become. Children of ice who learned to wield fire, now faced with the responsibility of balancing these elemental forces. If you found this exploration illuminating, consider subscribing to our channel for more journeys through humanity's deepest mysteries. For in understanding our past, we discover not just where we came from, but why we are who we are. And perhaps, most importantly, who we might yet become.